one of the quotes I've heard or I'm thinking about in this episode is that there are two things primarily that change us: pain and vision. And we've talked a lot about the pain of bringing this into marriage, what it does to our spouse, that if we live in this myth, that it could be a lot of pain. But let's look now at more vision, like a vision of the future. So what can happen in our marriage if we address this and we don't believe that marriage will fix us? We get rid of that myth. What kind of outcomes might we see in our marriage? What does this recovery and healing journey offer us in terms of a better vision of the kind of relationship we could have?
Big picture, Nick, it's living out the original design for relationship, for marriage, for sexuality that the Lord created from the beginning. And living out in that space, living life in that space is fulfilling, it's rewarding, there's joy. And so it's living as God intended us to live. And it's a big calling, but it's also living in victory. And that's a good place, unburdened.
Yeah, I think what came to mind for me is just you're not using sex as a medication anymore, and you're not using your spouse as a way, to be your recovery plan or keep, you from unwanted behavior. And just these two words came to mind: responding versus reacting. That if you live this reactive, you're talking about, Tyler, a spouse being on edge all the time. When's the next shoe going to drop? Have we had enough sex this month that it's like, he's going to be okay or she's going to be okay? I think you're able to be more present with your spouse in the moment, responding to the intimacy that you're building outside of the bedroom. And then that leads into the sexual relationship. And so I think that sex becomes a healthy part of your relationship, not the dominant part of your relationship. And yeah, I mean, God, I've talked about this so many different times, perpetual eye roll from the listener. But I just think for me, I saw all of the ways that this addiction was impacting my life, like my emotional health, my physical health, my ability to relate to people at an intimate level outside of certain contexts. There's just so many different things. So for me, this opened extra layers of healing that I could experience on a personal level that impacted not only my marriage, but also my relationship with my kids. I had this, oh my gosh, last night, guys, we're getting ready for bed. And for whatever reason, my 4-year-old, he already knows how to go he's potty trained. He can do the whole thing. But for whatever reason, he's like, "Dad, I have to go to the bathroom. I need your help." And I'm like, "Just go. You don't need my help." He's like, "No." And so we have this back and forth. Well, he doesn't get on the toilet, fast enough because he's yelling at me to come help. And he pees all over the bathroom. And I just got so angry. I'm like clenching my teeth and I raise my voice and he just like freaks out. And in that moment, I was like, oh crap. Like I'm hurting my kid right now. I got down on his level and I'm like, "Brooks, I'm so sorry. So sorry. Daddy got so frustrated and I shouldn't have treated you that way." And I was thinking about it even this morning that I would have never responded that way. I would not have come to that quickly. I would not have tried to reconnect with my kid. I would not have owned my mistakes. And I'm even thinking about today, like I want to go home and reinforce that connection even more with him. I want to make sure that he knows. And that's the kind of thing that recovery did for me. That understanding marriage doesn't fix it, understanding, okay, there's more to this problem, and then addressing what that actual problem does has created a healthier me where I'm able to be more present to the sin in my life and the repentance I need to take, the connections I have with my family. I could spend an hour talking to you about all the different ways, probably more than that. But that's for me is how it's played out and the vision I would cast for people.
What I hear in that, Trevor, is the best version of you coming forth. There are moments that, we haven't quite achieved that, but you're moving in that direction and that best version of you is coming forth. So well done.
I didn't tell that story for that. I mostly told you just so you know I'm very sinful and have my own issues, but there's so much at stake that you don't realize this area can impact.
Yeah, recovery is very holistic. And I would say in our experience, and I've noted this in the stories of other couples, we thought we were having good sex. It was regular. It was enjoyable. We both were in it. But I think as we look back pre-recovery, it was mostly physical connection. And it was about getting needs met, desires. But in recovery, as we started to really get traction and we were connecting emotionally and spiritually, we were able to connect on the level of our past traumas and how we brought things into the marriage. And my wife was really feeling seen, heard, and valued. There started to be a physical connection that went far deeper, that felt like that holistic, emotional, spiritual, physical connection. And it was like, wow, we thought we were having sex, but wow, it just got so much better. And not because of technique or anything else other than just we felt a soul connection. And so obviously I don't want to have a person pursuing recovery just because they're looking for better sex. But it really was an outcome of the work. And I think that's what I'm describing, is that when we're doing the hard work of recovery, then our sexual connection becomes an outcome of the good stuff already happening in our relationship, not a replacement for it or a substitute for a lack of that connection. And it's really hard to describe until you get there. But like I said, I've heard it in enough stories that I have the confidence that when there's this deeper emotional connection that's in place prior to our physical connection, it does something, and it's worth striving for, to say, man, like you mentioned, Tyler, this is the best that God created us for. This is what he designed, and I didn't realize how much I was missing it because I was just making it about physical needs until we started to get traction in our recovery.
I'm reminded, Nick, of early in our marriage, my wife and I, there was a moment in intimacy that God just reveals himself. Sorry. And I looked upon her and she looked just like an angel. Doesn't get any better, but it has gotten better. But just in that moment, I realized, okay, Lord, you're in this.
Yeah.
You got me, you got her, you have us. This is good.
That's cool. And also, don't ever apologize for crying again.
I'm telling you.
Yeah, you stop it. But that is, I mean, I think you bring up I don't want to belabor this at all, but you brought up a good point that, like, it's good to remember that God created sex and that it is a good thing and it's a gift and he is in it. If you feel like God is not a part of your sex life, then you're doing it wrong, and I'm sure there are many ways where that plays out day to day for us in our relationships, but to just keep that in mind for sure.